Welcome to the Oh Hell No podcast, where K Nicole delivers a daily dose of inspiration by discussing passion, purpose, and struggle with people who are living their best life doing what they love. Here's Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today we have a blast from the past. We have Vish Chatterji. He was episode 65. Last year he came on and he talked about his company, Head and Heart Insights. He has an executive coaching business where he does advising and holistic health services. And now he's back to discuss his book. Welcome back, Vish.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm excited to be back on the program. Has it been a year?
Yes, it has been a year.
Wow. So at that time, the book was still very, very early. Sort of faint idea in the back of my mind.
Wow. And now it is done. And when will it be out?
So its launch date is November 2nd. We had a couple of delays in printing. It was supposed to be September, but now we're November 2nd. But it's available for pre-order on Amazon right now. So it's out there in the market.
So tell us, what is the name of this book and why did you want to write a book like this?
So the book is called The Business Casual Yogi, and the subtitle is Take Charge of Your Mind, Body, and Career. And it's interesting because I never really thought of myself as a writer or an author or an expert on yoga necessarily. And, you know, I'd been a business executive most of my career. I was in the automotive industry, in the technology industry, and I had, senior management positions. And I always thought of myself as a business guy. And I did yoga as a practice, something I did to just center and calm myself in the morning, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of meditation. And when I think of yoga experts, they're, usually these women that have Instagram accounts that do these really difficult yoga poses, and they're sort of experts by virtue of their flexibility in a lot of ways. And I didn't realize it, but because I've been studying yoga for 20 years, I actually know a lot about yoga and the background and the tradition of it. And so I have a teacher who's like a real life Himalayan yogi. He's born and raised in India, trained in the caves in the Himalayas, also went and did his PhD in yoga, and he's been my teacher for the last 20 years. And so when I went through this series of twists and turns that we talked about in episode 65, and I emerged as a coach and sort of an East meets West coach, I realized that a lot of the things that yoga offers is exactly what business leaders are lacking in finding balance and success in their lives. So all of a sudden I found myself with my clients coaching them and teaching them things from the yoga tradition, and then they were having successes in their business. And I thought, in this area, yoga meets business. I do have expertise since I have the business background and such a long yoga background.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So can you tell us like two things that, and I'm just saying two, I know there's probably a lot, but just give us two things that exist in the yoga world that could help in the business world.
So I think the way yoga has shown up in the modern, especially in the Western world, is this physical sort of gymnastics-like exercise with lots of stretching. And then I think people got bored of just stretching, so they added music, and then they made it more flow-like. Vinyasa yoga is this flow where everyone's sort of, my yoga teacher calls it jumping and pumping yoga. So it sort of lost the broader framework around it, which is the Vedic tradition. And the entire Vedic tradition is basically a system to help you manifest the fullest of your potential. So whatever your potential is, whether it's a leader, a business owner, a mom, a dad, a student, whatever it is, to manifest the fullest that you have to offer, this Vedic tradition offered basically a technology or a series of techniques to do that. And it comprises of a series of philosophy, lifestyle guidelines. There's Ayurveda, which is a mind-body medicine system, which is what's the right diet, what's the right lifestyle, what's the right schedule to support you in whatever that work is that you want to do. And then there's a yoga tradition that has within it meditation as well as a series of physical movements of the body to tone the organs and tone the energy of the body to be sort of ready to do whatever that work is that you have to do. And so in my book, in 11 chapters, there's only one chapter that's devoted to actual the physical postures. The rest of it is in these other areas. And so, two very easy takeaways for somebody is, one of the things that they'll get out of the book is figuring out exactly what is their broader life purpose and how does their current work fit or not fit into that broader life purpose. And then once they have that sense of, why am I here? What am I here to do? What are my special talents and gifts? Then we get into what's the right, sort of second point, what's the right lifestyle, diet, relationships, foods, sleep schedule, work schedule, what are the right times to stage different types of work to meet that sort of broader, manifestation of you. And then on the third level is the yoga practice itself, the meditation practice that helps you be more present, more aware to do your work better. So it's basically a book that helps anybody, working in this world, find a way to find more balance and put that work in context of a bigger picture of their overall journey.
So in your coaching practice, have you ever coached someone and they realized that they were in the wrong business?
Yeah, a few times. It happens. Well, a lot of times somebody comes and says, "Look, I'm not happy with my job, or I'm not happy with my career. I want to make a change." And so, in that case, sometimes we work on the bigger picture, and when they figure that out, they realize that it's actually a very easy shift within their current role to just shift the role a little bit to be more aligned and more fulfilled and more happy. So sometimes it's a very minor thing. Even though somebody thought they were in the wrong role, it turns out they just have to adjust a little bit. In some cases, I've had clients where it's just not suiting them. Some, especially in very high stress management positions, people are ruining their health. So they're having illnesses, sicknesses, disease, marital problems, substance abuse, all sorts of things that are sort of collateral damage from the work. And so sometimes we'll help them end up in a different career path or a different job just to sort of get life into balance, so they can work longer. If somebody burns out or gets sick, I had one client, actually, his boss ended up getting so sick from overwork, literally, that he wasn't able to run the company anymore, and the next level of management took the company over from that leader.
Wow. Yeah, work can definitely kill you. I've worked with one of my bosses actually had a heart attack and died. And another boss that I had, he had a heart attack, and lucky for him, he didn't die, but he was very close to death. Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences. I've had two bosses in my life have heart attacks. Both survived, but it's clearly connected to stress. At the time they had them, the medical community didn't quite see the link between stress and heart disease. But obviously today it's a very clear link and very well understood in the medical establishment.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your writing process like for, putting this book together? Did you find yourself like writing every day? Did you have set times that you would write? Did you do a lot of research for this? Like, take us a little bit through that experience.
Well, the idea for the book came about actually during a yoga festival called Bhakti Fest. It's this huge yoga festival in the desert in Joshua Tree. And, every year my yoga teacher, his name is Yog Rishi Vishwaketu. It's a bit of a mouthful, but he's a traditional Indian yogi. He comes to the U.S. and he comes to Bhakti Fest and he teaches there. And he has, hundreds of students that come and take his classes. And I volunteered to assist him. So, I volunteered to assist him and carry his stuff around and open the door and assist in the class and adjust people. And he was teaching this huge class of about 200 people. And I was walking around adjusting people in warrior pose. And it just sort of occurred to me that, hey, I think we should partner up and write a book together, because I've got the business background and the sort of the Western cultural knowledge. And he's got the authentic yogi knowledge, like, from India, from the Himalayas, and himself with his deep practice. So when the class was over, I actually pitched him on the idea first. And to do that, I actually wrote up a table of contents. I just, spent an hour and sat down and thought, if I were to write a book on yoga and business, what would the table of contents look like? And so that was sort of the anchor stone, so to speak, is to write that out. And when I showed it to him and talked him through the idea, he loved it. And he said, let's do this. And so the next step was to pitch it to a publisher. And he had published a book called The Encyclopedia of Yoga Asanas previously. And his publisher was actually at that yoga festival. And the owner of the publisher was actually at the yoga festival as well. So we went over to the booth where they were, showing their books and upcoming books. And I went to the owner, and I had this, table of contents written out. And I said, hey, his name is Raul. I said, hey, Raul, I have an idea for a book. And, I'm sure he gets that all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I said, it's this intersection of yoga and business. And I gave him my background. He knew Vish and K, and I showed him this table of contents. And he thought, he looked at it and he said, this is something that's really missing in the world right now. There's the yoga world and the business world. There's, self-help books and management books, but there isn't anything that crosses the two really well. And so he said, I like where you're going, but you need to submit a proposal, a formal proposal. And I said, well, do you have like a template or something that people use that pitch your publishing house? And he said, yeah. So they sent me over this proposal, and in it I had to identify, and this is actually key for anyone writing a book, is who's your target audience? Who are you targeting? What type of people are they? What category do you expect your book to sit in? What in Amazon, what category would it be in? Sort of a lot of product marketing, and I'm a product marketing person by experience in my work. I have an MBA, and so I thought about it from an MBA point of view. What's the market? What's the target audience? What's the angle of this book? What's unique about this book? What are comparable books? What are similar books? And of course, I didn't find a lot, but I was thinking of, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Workweek, really sort of personal development leadership books in the business space. And so I sent the proposal in, and they came back and said, well, it looks good. You clearly get the marketing side of it, being a marketer yourself, but we don't know if you can write. So can you send us 2 sample chapters? And this is sort of when I really had to figure out, okay, how am I going to write? And I realized everything I learned how to write, I learned in probably 4th, 5th, 6th grade, somewhere in there, because my son's learning these things now, and he's in 7th grade. And, because I had a table of contents, I would take the chapter title that I'd come up with, and I would schedule time in my calendar for 2 hours to sit down and brainstorm a framework for that chapter title. So for instance, the chapter on finding your life purpose. Okay, so now I know, okay, it's maybe it's going to be a catchier title, but for now, finding your life purpose, right? Then I get on my whiteboard and I sketch out, for a couple hours, just really think about what is a flow of that? What are the points that I want to cover? What are the main things I want to talk about? And then I would schedule a call with Vish and K and ask him about the yoga angle of it all. Like, what does the yoga tradition and the Vedic wisdom say about, finding what is life purpose? And in the yoga world, it's called Dharma. So we started to have discussions on Dharma. What is Dharma? What does it mean? What are different types of Dharma? And all of a sudden, it sort of created this even more rich content. And then I would do my research, and I basically put together a sort of a bullet pointed page of what the chapter is going to look like. So that's sort of the framework. Let's call it the, if you're building a house, you got the studs up, right? Mm-hmm. So then I would schedule, and I found that I can't just sort of sit and write in the middle of, my regular workday and seeing clients. Like, I need the space. And so I would block off a couple of days in my calendar, and I have this beautiful little cabin up in the mountains in the forest in the San Bernardino Mountains of California. And I'd lock myself in the cabin for 2 days, and I'd, wake up in the morning, get dressed for the day, do my yoga practice, do my meditation, have breakfast. And by 8:30, I'd be at my computer. And, not worrying about writer's block because I'm scheduled to write. I would look at my outline and the bullet point and say, okay, what's in here? Okay, I need to write about that. And I would just start writing. And I would go for a good hour and a half, 2 hours of straight, just sort of all the ideas that are flowing based on that outline. So the outline sort of acted as the skeleton or the crutch for me to actually get the writing process going. And then about an hour and a half, 2 hours into it, I would take a break. I'd take a half-hour break, and I'd either watch some silly show on Netflix, or I'd go take a hike through the woods, or go do, some house repair around the cabin. And then I'd come back and write for another hour and a half, 2-hour stretch. Then I'd take a break and have a lunch. And so in the space of a complete day, I would get a solid 8 hours of actual writing in, of course, with lots of breaks in between each hour and a half to 2-hour block, whether it's a meal break or a break. And then I'd find I'd end up with a really solid sort of, chapter written in a couple of days.
Wow. That's pretty good for someone who's never written a book.
Well, yeah, but this is the early process. That's what I realized. Is I thought, okay, I've written a chapter, now it's good. But then I have to come back to it on another full day and edit it, right? So am I repeating myself? Where are the points? And so my own editing work adds another layer of complexity to then that initial sort of brain dump of a chapter. Mm-hmm. And then when I finished and completed a chapter and I thought it was good to go, and so, of course, I did this, 11, 12 times over to write the whole book. And I sent in my manuscript to the publisher. Then the editing process begins. So when I completed my manuscript, now looking back, that was about the halfway mark of the book being complete. Mm. Because there are so many steps of editing. We had 5 rounds of editing after what I had thought was my ready-to-go product.
Wow. That is intense.
It is, especially the first couple of rounds. So the first 2 rounds of editing are what they call development editing, which is, are the ideas coming across strong? Are the arguments backed up with good logic? Is the research correct? Does the research back up the statements you're making? And especially, going back to that original document is who is the audience for this book? These are highly educated college and master's degree level business professionals. So it has to make logical sense for them. And I'm coming with a bit of an esoteric topic that typically requires somebody to just believe and do it. Whereas in this book, I'm giving the rationale, like here's why it makes sense. And here's a parallel in modern management thinking to this particular teaching from the yoga and Vedic tradition. So a lot of the development editing was getting those arguments really solid, the first 2 rounds. Which I thought were brutal. And I remember calling friends up and saying, development editing is like the hardest thing I've ever done. This is just so difficult. And it was hours and hours of back and forth with my editor. But then development editing gets done, and then you get into copy editing, which is even harder.
Oh my God.
Even harder.
Wow. So what was your favorite part of this process?
The favorite part was everything before editing. Everything before editing. Everything that was just my world, my thing, writing and my ideas coming through and working with Vish, getting his input on things. Once the editing process began, it was really hard. I mean, I think every author goes through it, but it's a real test of your soul.
So how long would you say that process is for all of those different editing layers?
Well, this book moved pretty fast because we were, I pitched the idea just about 2 years ago, mm-hmm. and I submitted the sample chapters about 1.5 years ago, and then we negotiated a contract. So the book writing, all of this has happened in 1.5 years. So I would say it was about 7-8 months of me writing the book, and then maybe 5 months, 6 months of the editing process. And those are really intense.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It is.
I mean,
but I know authors that take 5 years to write a book. So in the book land, this is a fast process.
Yeah.
Now, copy editing is where things got really interesting, and this was a big learning experience for me, because when the copy editor goes through the work, they're making it ready and polished for the market. And, I think authors that self-publish, I think it's a tremendous effort that they do the work themselves and they self-publish. But I hope they think about having a really good copy editor that isn't incentivized just to please the author. Because, with a publisher relationship, the copy editor doesn't really care whether I'm happy or not happy. They're sort of employed by the publisher. And what I found is, my baby, my work, my manuscript that I thought was in such a good place after all those rounds of development editing, all of a sudden was getting redlined and torn up and reorganized and rearranged and chapters moved around. And it was just insane. But what I realized is what the copy editor is doing is they want my voice to shine through. They want my true intention to really shine through the words. And so what they're doing is sort of polishing and getting rid of all the clutter of words so that the point really comes through. So, if I'm telling a story, for instance, I might have taken, 3 or 4 pages to tell a beautiful story, and they're able to edit it down to, a page and a half, and it's way more powerful. And the only analogy I can think of is, when you read a book and then you watch the movie's never as good as the book, because the movie sort of spoon feeds you, whereas when you read a book, your imagination sort of creates the texture and richness of the story. And so, me as a descriptive writer, I maybe write with too many words, and it sort of takes away from the reader's imagination. And so when the copy editor cuts the words away, the reader's imagination gets ignited, and the intention of my teaching becomes a lot stronger, a lot more powerful, a lot more impactful to the reader. So copy editing is what makes the book very much more impactful.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So now when you write a book and you have all of these people involved, do you pay that cost for these people to be involved, or is that like the publisher who takes that on, or how does that work?
So indirectly, you do pay for it, because in the publishing world, they come up with a price that they're going to sell the book for, and then they subtract out all their costs to operate the publishing house. And then you, as the author, negotiate a certain royalty percentage on every copy sold. And so I get, a sliver of royalty for each book sold, and the rest of the profit of the book goes to pay the overhead to run the publishing house. So indirectly, if you were to self-publish, you obviously get all the profits of the book, but then you pay people directly to do the work for you if you're hiring editors. But in traditional publishing, it's baked into the profit they're taking off the book. And then, of course, you take your royalty from that.
And now, do you collect royalties forever, or?
Yeah. So as long as the book is in print, then I would be collecting royalties on it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So what made you decide not to self-publish?
It didn't enter my mind, because the first thing I thought of is we were at the festival, and I pitched that publisher on the idea, and it sort of, it took a life of its own at that point. Had the publisher said no, I'm not sure if I would have. I think that, going through a publisher, this is Mandala Publishing that I'm going through. They have a lot of credibility. They have an incredible team. They have incredible design. So the book, for instance, I posted on Facebook the other day the unboxing of the first copy of the book. It just arrived in a box to me. It's a beautiful book. The matte finish on the cover and the spot glossing on the graphics and the title, the paper quality, the weight of the page, the off-white color of the page to make it readable, all these little details, the design of what should go on what page, if there's a table, making sure it's all on one page. We had a sketch artist sketch yoga poses and making sure the poses are the right size and the right page. All these details, the design of the product, the design of the book. I think you get tremendous support when you go through a publisher, especially like Mandala Publishing. They're known for their beautiful designs of books. So the book itself is a very beautiful book physically, and then of course when you open it, the content is also very powerful.
Oh, okay. So are you going to do like a book tour? Are you doing anything exciting around the book?
It's interesting. That's a good question. So a lot of my friends have been asking, are you doing a book tour? And I didn't really know what to answer, because this is my first book, and I'm still stepping into the identity of an author. And so I called my publisher up and said, hey, am I supposed to do a book tour? What is a book tour? Everyone's asking me about a book tour. And they said, well, look, if you're a really big author and you're very well known, it's your second book and you've got this massive, audience, then yes, you do a book tour. But these days, because everything's moved to electronic platforms, it's really about social media. And so rather than, the expense of flying around and going to all these different places to do a book tour, it's about getting the word out and promoting the book, through the, digital marketing channels that exist today. So a lot of the traditional idea of a book tour has sort of changed to more of these, digital mediums. But I do have quite a few engagements lined up, and in a way, speaking with you today is actually the kickoff for me for a series of events. I'm giving a talk at the Chopra Center later this week to all instructors worldwide, and so there's a massive base of Chopra instructors, and I'm giving a talk related to the book on intention setting for business goals. And then I'm doing the opening ceremony for Bhakti Fest this year. It's the huge yoga festival, so I'm doing a fire ritual and opening ceremony for it. With these deep ancient Sanskrit mantras, and then I'll talk about the book there. And then after that, I've been invited to speak at UC Berkeley. They have a huge leadership conference at the Haas School of Business, and the title they came up with. So this is not from me. This is from them. The title they came up with for the talk was "The Way of the Yogi: Ancient Wisdom for Modern Business."
Oh, I like it.
It could have been a title for my book. It was really well done.
Yeah, that's great. Wow.
Yeah, so there's just a few different talks and events that I'm showing up at to promote the book, and then my publisher's organizing a few different book events, book signings at different locations, and then my wife wants to throw a big party for us locally here in the beach cities of LA, for all our friends to come and give a talk about the book and buy copies of the book and sign the book.
That's so exciting. I'm so excited for you, Vish. That's
Thank
so
you.
cool. Yeah. So, I want you to share, of course, an oh hell no moment that took place, while you were writing this book, because I'm sure you have one.
Let's see, an oh hell no moment. I mean, the moment that comes to mind was when was well pre-book is just stepping on the yoga path. And I might have told the story last time, but it has a different context now. I was at a dinner in LA with Gurmukh Khalsa, who's a very famous yoga teacher. And at the time I was deep into a startup, fundraising, having a couple of successful businesses under my belt. And she looked at me and she was introduced to me, and I said, "Hi, my name is Vish." And she asked me, "So Vish, where do you teach?" And I thought to myself, "Oh, well, I'm not a teacher." And I was kind of looking behind me like, is she talking to me? I'm not a teacher. I'm a business guy. I'm an executive. I run companies. I run divisions. I run, business. I'm not a teacher. I'm a student of yoga, but not a teacher. And she sort of looked at me, this sort of wagging finger, and sort of prophesized in a way. And she said, "You should not die this lifetime just being a student. You need to go out and teach. You have so much wisdom and so many gifts to offer." And I don't know, she must have seen it in my soul or something. And she said, "You need to go out and share this wisdom." And in the back of my mind, I was in my face with my demeanor. I was like, "Oh, okay." I was kind of a little stunned. I was quite shocked. I call it a soul level chiropractic adjustment. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, "Oh, hell no. I am not a yoga teacher. I am a business guy, and I run companies and businesses." And sure enough, in the months after that prophecy, a lot of things in my business life started falling away, and my path veered from startup executive to coach, and then from coach to teacher. And today I teach meditation, I teach yoga, I teach Ayurveda, and of course I'm teaching through the book. And I've realized very clearly that part of my dharma, or part of my mission or life purpose, whatever you want to call it, is to help business people find more success in their lives in a balanced way through the teachings of the Vedic tradition. So Vedic philosophy, yoga, and Ayurveda. And so that moment, that oh hell no moment, has manifested into this.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever seen her again? I mean, Pat, I know that you saw her when you completed your yoga training, but have you seen her since then? Like, did you ever see her again after that?
I've seen her in passing. She's quite a celebrity, so she's always surrounded by lots of people. But we traded a few emails, and she wrote a lovely testimonial for the book.
Wow, that is amazing, Vish.
Yeah, and most of my
God.
testimonials are from businessy people, like Bank of America and Avis Budget Group and Google and Sony Pictures. And then there's Gurmukh, and I'll read you her testimonial. Words do not have the capacity to express my love and respect for Yogrishi Vishwaketu and Vish Chatterji. They have the ability to bring the heavens to the earth and the earth to the heavens. That divine balance I have felt every time I have been in Yogrishi's Vishwaketu's class. His sense of humor and his prayerful skills as a yogi are unsurpassed. And that's from Gurmukh Khalsa, co-founder and director of Golden Bridge Yoga Center, Los Angeles, and master of Kundalini Yoga.
Wow. Look at that. That's like a full circle moment, you know?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this is amazing. I'm very happy for you. And I'm definitely going to pick up a book. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go and do a pre-order.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, pre-orders are very, very important. I've realized in the publishing world that the more pre-orders are, the more copies they'll print, and it sort of accelerates the whole system. So, and to all your listeners, please look it up on Amazon. If it resonates with you, please pre-order it.
Yes, I'll definitely put this information in the show notes. And thank you again for coming on and talking about your next chapter. And I wish you much success with the book and all of your engagements.
It was lovely talking with you again. Thank you very much, Nicole.
No problem.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show.